Now, speaking of this sort of stupidity, last night Stephen Colbert had on Bill Clinton. Now, as you'll recall, Bill Clinton is the worst. So Bill Clinton is not only a human being who has sexually harassed half of the women in the United States, he's just as bad about women as any allegations about Trump ever have been. Bill Clinton, some of the allegations are worse. I mean, there are allegations of rape, a credible allegation of rape against him by Juanita Broderick. Well, Bill Clinton went on NBC's Today Show, and then he got mad at the interviewer yesterday. We pointed this out. He got very upset with the interviewer and started waving his bony finger at the guy and saying, "How dare you ask me these questions? I apologize to the entire American people." Well, now, Stephen Colbert is asking Bill Clinton about all of this. But Stephen Colbert, remember, a guy who said that President Trump had been used by Vladimir Putin as his bleep holster, as his genital holster. You remember, he said this on national TV. I guess that Stephen Colbert's idea of a strong interview is to act as precisely that for Bill Clinton, to perform the job no one but Monica Lewinsky would perform on Bill Clinton. Apparently, that's what Stephen Colbert was doing. Look how he opens this interview. Now, later in the interview, Colbert says, you know, you're the most prominent man in my lifetime to sexually harass the help. But listen to how he opens this interview with Bill Clinton.
I noticed you didn't enjoy that entire interview. I want you to enjoy this one, but I do want to ask you something, which is when I got home last night, on the CNN, they had a lower third banner that said something about William Clinton's tone-deaf response to the question from the Today Show. My question is, would you like a do-over on that answer? Do you understand why some people thought that was a tone-deaf response to his questions about the Me Too movement and how you might reflect on your behavior 20 years ago?
Okay, why don't you just stick your hand up his ass and use his face as a meat puppet? I mean, as long as you're going to just feed him the answer, you may as well just be a full ventriloquist. Like, Stephen Colbert could have done an interview with Stephen Colbert dressed as Bill Clinton with that question. I mean, that's as bad as any leading question that was asked by anybody during the election cycle on Fox News to Donald Trump. Okay, that leading question is astonishing. The last part of that question, do you understand why some people thought that was a tone-deaf response to his question on the Me Too movement? Here's the part where he feeds him the answer. I love it. And how might you reflect on your behavior 20 years ago? And how that reflection may change based on what you've learned from the Me Too movement? Well, why don't you just give him the answer? Why bother asking the question? Would you like a do-over? Imagine that Donald Trump would come on the show right now, and Stephen Colbert, and Donald Trump just did an interview about the sexual harassment allegations, and he gotten really grumpy about it. And Stephen Colbert, you think Colbert would lead off with, you know, Mr. President, would you like a do-over? Would you like to reflect on how the Me Too movement has changed your perspective on these things over the years? Or do you think that Colbert would have said, you know, Mr. President, looks like you weren't too happy with that sexual harassment question. Maybe because you sexually harassed people. Don't you think that's what Colbert probably would have said to lead off that interview? And then, of course, here's Bill Clinton's answer, because he gets thrown a softball right over the middle of the plate, and he hits about a single. I mean, he barely clears the second baseman's head.
It wasn't my finest hour, but the important thing is that was a very painful thing that happened 20 years ago, and I apologize to my family, to Monica Lewinsky and her family, to the American people. I meant it then, I meant it now. I've had to live with the consequences every day since. And I still believe this Me Too movement is long overdue, necessary, and should be supported.
Okay, so now he believes that the Me Too movement, yeah, I love that. He comes back and he actually spouts Colbert's direct answer back at Colbert. Yes, great interviewing skills. And then you wonder why people on the right aren't willing to watch Stephen Colbert, why people on the right are looking at people like Colbert and saying, this is endemic to the media. You wonder why we don't take the media seriously? You know, President Trump, when he says fake news, I've said this 1,000 times, I'll say it again. When President Trump says fake news and people resonate to that, it's not because they're just blindly following President Trump. They're doing that because they didn't like the media in the first place. They figured the media was lying to them because the media does lie to them. The media plays defense for Democrats on a regular basis, all the time. And then we are supposed to believe them when suddenly they turn on one politician in particular? At the very least, we're going to say it's disproportionate. As I said yesterday, the same media who are complaining about coverage of Hillary Clinton's health issues was spending the last week suggesting that maybe Melania Trump had been abducted and anally probed by aliens or something. These are the same people. It really is quite amazing. Okay, so in just a second, I want to get to more fallout from the disinvitation to the White House by Stephen Colbert did an entire shtick yesterday because Donald Trump Jr. put out a tweet. And the tweet that Donald Trump Jr. Put out was a tweet of his daughter, and he said that he was telling her that he was going to take half her candy on Halloween to teach her what socialism was. Okay, you know, kind of funny. And Stephen Colbert goes after Donald Trump Jr., as Stephen Colbert is apt to do.
Last night, Don Jr. tweeted a picture of his young daughter holding her candy bucket and said, I'm going to take half of her candy tonight and give it to some kid who sat at home. It's never too early to teach her about socialism. Yes, it's never too early to teach kids the danger of sharing. On Halloween, kids literally go door to door to get free candy from the neighbors because the kids don't have it and the neighbors do. That's socialism. Also, give it to some kid who sat at home. You know Halloween is fun, right? No child in the history of childing has ever voluntarily missed Halloween. I'm worried that kid didn't go out. Why? Is he okay? Is that child caring for a sick parent? You know what would be a nice thing to do? Give him half your Halloween candy.
Okay, so this is such a misread of socialism, it's quite astonishing. So first of all, Halloween is not socialism, and sharing is not socialism. Voluntary sharing is not socialism. Okay, voluntary sharing is not socialism. It's called charity. We do it all the time. Okay, when you give out candy on Halloween, you're not being a socialist. You are sharing things. Okay, socialism is when the government forces you to share things. Socialism is when the government comes in and mandates that you share your candy, Stephen Colbert, you stupid idiot. Okay, the idea that socialism is just sharing is belied by, the 100 million dead people over the last century who failed to share voluntarily enough and therefore were taken off to the gulags or shot in mass graves. So no, not quite the same thing. As far as this idea that, there's a poor child in need and so you should really give that child half your candy, again, that's up to me. I may agree with you, Stephen Colbert, but the idea that Donald Trump Jr.'s daughter should have to give half her candy, I think that the better plan there would probably be for Donald Trump Jr.'s very wealthy man to get that kid some candy if that kid needs charity. But I'm not going to enforce it with the power of government. So, again, the deliberate misread on socialism here is pretty astonishing, and it just shows how the left thinks about socialism. They think about it as a benevolent, wonderful thing that really has no downside, except for the whole, we have to shoot people if they refuse to abide by my version of what charity ought to constitute. Okay. Quick big idea here on the Ben Shapiro Show. So every Thursday we go through a big idea. One of the big ideas today that we're going to do is stare decisis. So Clarence Thomas did an interview with Laura Ingraham, which was quite good yesterday. Laura clerked for Thomas on the Supreme Court, and Thomas was asked about his judicial philosophy. And I'm going to explain what differentiates Clarence Thomas from Justice Scalia and why I actually prefer Clarence Thomas to Justice Scalia's jurisprudence, even though I love Justice Scalia's writing.
Your philosophy is described as alternatively formalistic, rigid, strictly conservative. How do you describe your philosophy, Justice?
I think it's get it right. It's I think we are required to reason to a conclusion, and that's what we try to do, and try to do it in a way that it is accessible to regular people.
And when you read Thomas's decisions, first of all, they are very clear and they're very easy to read. But one of the things that differentiates Clarence Thomas from Justice Scalia is Justice Scalia believed to a certain extent in stare decisis. That literally means the case has been decided. It's what we call precedent. And the problem with Justice Scalia's take on this is that if you believe in precedent, you have to pick and choose which precedent you choose to uphold. And you can either have a blanket rule that a case that has been decided on similar merits must stand, or you can choose a rule that says, I don't care what the case decided before. If it's not right, then it's not right. Cases in which this comes up, Roe v. Wade, right? Do we abide by Roe v. Wade? It's stare decisis, right? It's a case that's been decided about abortion. Do we just abide by it, or is the case wrong? Thomas would say, I don't care whether the case has already been decided. They got it wrong. I'm going to overrule it. The same thing holds true for things like Dred Scott or Plessy v. Ferguson or Buck v. Bell. There are a bunch of really bad cases in American history. Korematsu. Bunch of really bad cases in American history. Do you just abide by them because stare decisis? So Justice Scalia never really had a consistent rule as to which cases he would abide by, which precedent he would abide by. Thomas does have a consistent rule. That rule is if the case is wrong, I overrule it. And the case can be wrong based on them getting the case wrong at the time. This is why I think that Justice Thomas is actually a more conservative justice, a more constitutional justice than Justice Scalia, even though they voted together most of the time. Thomas's jurisprudence is, I think, more solid and a better basis for constitutionalism than Justice Scalia's, even though I'm a big Scalia admirer and Scalia's quite
Bill Clinton allegedly raped people. Like multiple allegations of rape, multiple allegations of sexual assault. Last week on the program, I read you a transcript of what Juanita Broderick said Bill Clinton did to her, and that didn't even get into what Paula Jones said or Eileen Wellstone or a vast bevy of Christy Zurcher, an enormous number of women said that Bill Clinton did to them. Hillary Clinton was asked over the weekend about Donald Trump's attacks on her relationship with Bill, and here's what Hillary said.
Well, if he wants to engage in personal attacks from the past, that's his prerogative, you know, so be it. I'm going to draw the distinctions between where I stand and where he stands when it comes to equal pay for women, raising the minimum wage, which affects 2/3 of the women are the ones receiving the minimum wage, protecting a woman's right to make the most personal health care decisions. That's why I'm so proud to have the endorsement of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund that I'll receive today in New Hampshire, because I'm going to fight as hard as I can against any efforts to defund Planned Parenthood, something that he supports. So there are very clear distinctions. He can say whatever he wants to about me. Let the voters judge that. But I am not going to let him or any of the other Republicans rip away the progress that women have made. It's been too hard fought for, and I'm going to stand up and make it clear there's a huge difference between us.
So there's the misdirect, right? He asks her specifically about the question of Hillary's sexual assault scandals with Bill, and the fact that she was the attack beacon for Bill. I mean, she was the person who created the Bimbo Eruption Squad. She was the person who was attacking Juanita Broaddrick and threatening her. She skips over that and she goes directly to, yeah, but I'm for abortion, which of course is why the left loves her, and that's all the left cares about. The left believes in virtue too, and they also don't believe that the intellect is associated with virtue. They just believe that anybody who believes in abortion is totally cool, even if they rape people. And this is how the feminist left believed back in the 90s, is what they still believe now. Rape is a convenient tool in their political arsenal, but it's not something in which they deeply care. They really don't care whether a leftist politician is a rapist, so long as he is okay with the woman aborting the product of that rape. That means that he's totally cool. So Hillary says that this is going to have no effect. The character attacks on her have no effect. Now, over here in the real world, where we actually know voters and we deal with people on a regular basis, you know, I've talked with a lot of Democrat voters, and one thing that they don't even know is that Hillary Clinton's husband was a rapist, right, or an alleged rapist. They don't know that Hillary Clinton laughed at an alleged rape victim. They don't know that Hillary Clinton threatened another alleged rape victim, or that she attacked the various victims of Bill Clinton's sexual abuse and harassment. They don't know any of those things. And it does have an effect, because it means that Hillary can't be some great feminist hero. Most people still exist, thank God, in the United States in the world of virtue and not in the world of intellect. There's people on the left who exist in the world of virtue where the virtues and the sins are flipped. And there are people on the right who believe in virtue where there is virtue and there is evil. Most of the people in the middle of the country don't care about intellectual status as much as they do about what we call virtue signaling when they vote, which is, I have to show all of my friends that I get it, right? I'm proud of who I voted for. That's why most people will wear the I voted sticker. That's a form of virtue signaling, right? I'm signaling to everybody else that I voted. I'm a better person than you because I voted. I'm a good person. I did my jury service. I'm a good person because I did all of these things. The same thing is true in any election. In any election, there are two candidates, and whoever wins the virtue signaling election wins the election. Whoever wins the election of the people who think how I vote is a reflection of me as a good person or not, that's who's going to win. That's why attacking Hillary on her Libya policy is worthless. But demonstrating to people that Hillary is a nefarious character who covers up for her husband's rapes and actually enables them so as to achieve political power, that has some more power. And people on the left get this, right? I mean, Mark Halperin at Bloomberg is a journalist of the left. He says that this is going to have an impact on the Hillary campaign.
Harold said that, Hillary Clinton said that people have a right to be heard until their allegations are disproven. And I think that in some of the most prominent cases, not only were the accusations not disproven, they were confirmed and acknowledged by President Clinton.
How's that?
So I think, well, he acknowledged he had a relationship with Jennifer Flowers. He paid Paula Jones off in a settlement, and has acknowledged much of what Monica Lewinsky says happened. So those are three pretty prominent examples.
And then they pretend that none of this ever happens, right? So, but here's the fact: all of this does have an impact on Hillary. Now, the reason I harp on this is because the same thing that's driving David Brooks is also driving some of the establishment candidates. It's not just the commentators. So, for example, John Kasich, the Ohio governor, whose father I've heard, but it's not. I've heard that his father is a mailman. Just what I hear. He said, quote, "Look, I just don't like that stuff. It's been around American politics throughout our history, people calling people names. But to me, Hillary would be defeated because I believe Micah," this would be Micah Brzezinski over at MSNBC, "she has no vision. I don't want to spend my time bashing Bill Clinton." Governor Chris Christie, "The American people have made their judgment on Bill Clinton. there's a difference between discussing Secretary Clinton's conduct and President Clinton's conduct. Jeb Bush, quote, "We ought to focus on the present and the future. Doing what Bill did, was it appropriate? Heck no, it wasn't. You know, of course it wasn't. But that's long gone. Bill's not running for president. Hillary Clinton is." What do they think they're winning by leaving this massive and accurate character attack off the table? What do they think they're winning? They think that they're winning the intelligentsia primary, right? They don't care about virtue. Virtue doesn't matter. They think that if they attack Hillary Clinton on her policies, the intelligentsia will say, oh, well, she must be stupid. She must not belong in this category because she's dumb. And then maybe we won't vote for her. Here's the thing. The intelligentsia does not decide who is going to be the next president of the United States. Democrats understand this, which is why Democrats play a double game. When they speak to the intelligentsia, like David Brooks, Barack Obama puts on the creased pant leg pants, and he talks about Burkean literature, and he talks about John Rawls, and he talks about various philosophers. And then when he gets out on the stump, he says that Mitt Romney specifically fired a guy so that his wife would die of cancer. Right? He plays a double game. He tells the intelligentsia what they want to hear, and then he tells the people the way that they operate. Republicans won't play that game. So Donald Trump is one side or the other, right? He can't speak the intellectual language, so he speaks the virtue language. The only candidate out there who ever does both is actually Cruz, but the establishment is trying to peg him to, he only does the character talk, and we don't like character talk because, after all, we know Hillary Clinton can't be bad. She's too smart to be truly bad. Right? Bill Clinton can be an open rapist, but for the intelligentsia, he's not a bad guy because he's too smart to really be a rapist. I mean, if he were stupid, maybe he'd be a rapist, but he's too smart to really be a rapist, you know.